How'd you shoot?
It's funny you asked that because
of course I asked that.
Played Coyote Moon Friday.
Yeah, how was
practice
that?
round. I enjoyed the Moon.
Nice place, right?
Beautiful place.
Yeah.
I was able to get out, played solo 89, which is, a good round for me.
Look at you.
On the road. So I'm coming into the tourney on Saturday, and I'm feeling like, okay, it's been 5 years since I won the jacket. Today's my day. 110.
Yeah.
110 on Saturday.
If you are not right at all.
110 shots to get home.
Didn't Steiny shoot a 99?
And he played pretty well.
Yeah. Old Greenwood, if you are not right, and I know it's also ready, it's at a tournament level right now.
They're playing the Barracuda on Thursday.
That is a very, very difficult course.
Your boy didn't play well, but combining bad shots with bad luck and a few bad choices, you make the turn at 58, and I'm thinking, I might shoot a $120. I mean,
Dibs, come on. You got to know better. You got to come off the course and be like, hey, pin placement. Let's talk pin placement.
Well, we could talk pin placements
I would have
because
faked an injury.
the pin placements were awful. There was a couple holes where the pin is on top of a crown on a ridge, a couple tucked in the whole deal, whatever. So I walked to the car, and actually I sat down for 30 minutes by myself away from the group. I needed a 30-minute cooling off period. Sat there,
sensation.
had a couple of claws straight from the car.
Oh, there you go.
That were about 112 degrees each because they had been sitting in the car. Didn't care. Didn't
a
get
hot claw.
a couple of hot claws. Two hot claws to the dome. And then I thought, you know what? Tomorrow's a new day.
Shake it off.
Went back, went to sleep, woke up on Sunday, went to the range, and started just picking it. It's like, okay, today's my day. 85 on Sunday.
Okay.
So
Well done.
That was at
That's how you bounce
Gray's
back.
Crossing.
At Gray's Crossing.
A 25-stroke
it's a
differential.
more gettable course, but that's
Much more gettable, and it suits my left to right ball flight. But
did your 110, did you keep it together or you drop a bunch of F-bombs?
no F-bombs. And, I do run hot, admittedly, but there was only a couple of moments of like, oh, mother father.
Actually, a couple of hot claws.
Well, and unfortunately, and we actually had to ask the groundskeeper about this because the bunkers were rock hard. And I said, dude, what's up with these bunkers?
What are you doing?
You're questioning the groundskeeper?
Well, because they have the tournament coming up Thursday. And I said, this can't possibly be the way your bunkers are going to be set up. And they said, no, we're going to go in after today and, dig them out a little bit, soften them up. Because they were rock hard, Larry.
Well, thanks for not doing it 24 hours before you hopped on the course.
Dude, come on. Because it's one thing to have a bunker that's super full of sand and fluffy. I can deal with that a little bit better. But when you have a rock hard bunker,
Nothing you can do.
no.
Nothing
So
you can do.
you go to pick the ball and the club bounces and then pew. So I'm hitting skull. I mean, you want to talk about skulls, dude? It was like Halloween out there.
People calling you the
So
real
what-
Dibber Claws on YouTube.
So what
you.
place? What place did you finish in after the
I think
85?
I finished like 11th, 10th or 11th.
How many people?
40.
And where'd Steiny finish?
Steiny was, I think, one better than me or one worse than me. I'd have to check.
Was he also complaining about the rock hard bunkers or?
No, I don't know how his Saturday round went. I know he shot a 99, which was way better than what I shot. But, for me, it was more than just the bunkers. It was a collection of ground balls. Tee shots were pretty good, but everything else was just atrocious, Larry.
There you go.
Or ferocious, as Low Neal would say.
Unlike Stephen Curry, who was unbelievable this weekend.
So
He's got more championships than hole-in-ones, by the way.
I'm shooting a 110 on Saturday, and I'm just checking my phone because whatever, the group in front of us, so it was a 5.5-hour round.
Oof.
Which it was cart path only, which means because they're getting ready for the tourney,
Gotta
a lot of
hydrate.
walking. So I'm sitting in the cart on like 11, and I'm just sick and tired of waiting, and I'm terrible. And I open up my phone, and I see Steph Curry running because he got an ace, and it's like, can I hate any other human being more than I hate this man?
I had the same thought,
Steph Curry,
except for my.
I hate you.
Yeah, my brain does it a little bit different way. Like,
Because you don't know about hate.
not
You're
yet.
hate free.
I mean,
Give it time.
Soon to be.
I know we've learned not to sort of act like we can tell what's going on in someone else's life, right? Anthony Bourdain took his own life when he looked like he had one of the greatest lives out there. So I'm not assuming anyone's mental health. But have you ever seen any sports life that appears to have gone better than Steph Curry's?
He's done some winning.
It's not just winning. It's the enjoyment of it. It's the nature of it, the surrounding pieces, the celebrity wife, the gorgeous-looking 3 kids, the way he seems to enjoy that. 18 basketball players will walk by that hoop in Tahoe, and they'll all miss. Steph's goes in. that kind of thing. There's just something about that dude. The pre-game show that he puts on at Chase, there's something about the whole process and the untouchable resume. The fact that, like, right, how surprised would you be if you walked in today and opened up Twitter and it's like Steph Curry got arrested outside a nightclub? Do you know what I mean? There does not appear in my eyes to be a life of a superstar that ever appears to have gone more smoothly than this one.
He's got the total grounded by faith, right? I think that's a big part of it. Really high character.
My man.
Lived the NBA life vicariously through his father, so he probably saw all the mistakes that potentially can be made, whether they were made by Dell or maybe Dell's teammates. So he's kind of has some advantages for sure, but he's made some really, really good decisions, and he seems to be in a good spot mentally, emotionally, spiritually, doesn't he? I mean, I don't see. I've been around him. I've never sensed any resentment about anything. He was picked, he could have gone number one, didn't go number one, but it doesn't like dominate him. His thoughts. I just think that he's a high character guy. We're lucky to be rooting for a guy who's this solid. I mean, there's a lot of solid people in the world, but maybe we don't see them all the time in our sports superstars. And he's all wrapped up into he's both.
Well,
right?
I did this over the weekend. Good exercise, everybody in the room. If I said to you, right, we're radio hosts. If I said, okay, I give you an hour, say, come up with an angle on something debatable, controversial, something for people to chew on, where there are opinions on both sides regarding Steph Curry. Go ahead.
Oh, it'd take me 5 seconds.
Place in history.
What?
I mean, yeah.
Well,
No. That's not that.
No,
that's,
just like his
but
character?
That's not him. I'm talking about him. If I asked you about LeBron, if I asked you about
Right.
Michael Jordan,
You're gonna
if I
hate it,
asked
but
you
know
about-
my answer.
about Kevin Durant. Like, please don't tell me because he threw a mouthpiece one time. What is it?
No, it's because of his NIMBY stance on
Oh,
fair
gosh,
and equitable housing down
I mean,
and you're welcome. And I rest. I didn't need an hour, Mark.
Atherton.
I did. Thank you. I didn't need an hour. I needed 5 seconds.
And you're going to get 0 calls.
I'll go with
NIMBY.
but that's because of who
888-957-9570. Thank you.
I'll go with he made it seem like in his goodbye to Jordan Poole like he's just another guy on the team, when in reality he made that call, and you know it, and we all know it.
He ordered the code red.
He at least was. It was
Well, he had the key and then he threw it away.
Whether he made the call or signed off on the call, that I guess is debatable.
We talked about that day.
Yeah.
And again, my response would be that. I mean, if that's what we got,
I mean, that's really all we got.
if that's what we got,
Well, I had more, but he poo-poos it because
I sure do.
He's not connected
Well,
to
would
the general housing crisis in the Bay Area.
Would you say that's probably as close as we're going to get to anything that's actually debatable?
and I mean, even that's in the moment. I do remember when he gets a technical foul because of a thrown mouthpiece. It's almost like we have to act like he punched somebody, because that's as far as we're going to go to Steph did something wrong. Like, when has Steph done anything that would make you go, he shouldn't have done that?
I'll give you one right now.
Okay?
He wouldn't work out for the Warriors before the draft.
Shameful.
How'd that work out?
Still took him
Genius.
anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I don't believe anything happened at all.
Basically, he told Larry Riley and Don Nelson, I don't want to be there,
Right.
and they picked him against his will.
Yep.
I mean, but to bounce off of that, not just because of that point, but I don't know if there's been a player or an athlete right now whose career started as rocky as Stephen Curry's that has been as smooth since his ankle injuries. Like, it wasn't as if he just came into the league and he was LeBron James scoring 20 points in Sacramento his first ever game. Like, he was not a perfect project to begin with, and yet now we almost don't even talk about that because of how the rest of the years have gone.
And think about when they traded Monte Ellis, what the reaction was of the fan base. Basically, the organization chose
Yeah, good point.
Steph, I can't remember how to pronounce it, Curry, instead of Monte Ellis. And the organization, the fans, they booed the new owner. Like, how dare you trade Monte Ellis, a known commodity, 20 a night, for this unknown guy with bad ankles? So that's, I think, Evan speaks to what you're talking about, the rocky quote unquote beginnings to his career.
Except for, again, that's nothing that he even did.
And he
No,
wasn't.
you're right.
There's nothing that he did. That was
No,
all
but that
sort of
speaks to where he was in terms of
Sure.
what the fans thought
Sure.
about him at that time.
right.
And
And I think it actually builds the legend. The point that you're making,
Yeah, exactly.
which is that he does not have a LeBron body and the expectation coming in. He had to build
And
up to this level.
People didn't boo, Joe based on that. They booed Joe on the idea that Monte was the most entertaining player on the team.
Yeah.
He was one of the best athletes on the team, and you traded him at the time, not necessarily for Steph Curry, but for a broken down, he can't play tonight, Andrew Bogut. That's really, and people didn't.
It was all of it and more.
And it was a
yeah,
little
you're
bit
right.
of like a projection of what Bogut was going to eventually become. But the Warrior fan who wasn't certain, super dialed in on exactly where Bogut was in the injury process was like, what? You passed on T-Mac for Adonal Foy. You passed on Kobe Bryant for Todd Fuller. And now you're trading, Monte Ellis for an injured big man.
right.
I think that was a lot of it.
And you are listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM, HD1, San Francisco, and Odyssey Station. Well, and this kind of takes us to where we were before you guys came in, and that's bouncing off of Joe Lacob's comments in his one-on-one with Bay Area News Group. He wants the big three to retire in Golden State: Curry, Thompson, Green. Are you taking his word for it?
Yes,
Yep.
because it makes great business sense. And we're going to get into the Shohei Ohtani business angle in terms of however much you think that you're going to have to pay him, you're going to make that back maybe twofold based on what that would mean for the Giants. And if you're Joe Lacob and you look at the big three and you think about 3 more years, maybe 4 more years of them playing together, what does that mean in terms of money as opposed to what happens after the fact? And let's take winning out of it. Let's say they don't win another title. Let's say they become like they were this year, 2 playoff series and you're out, and they're that team for the next 7 years. Well, financially, you're going to make way more money with the big three here than you will after the big three are gone, considering the same level of results.
My only fear would be the flexibility, not now, but say 2 to 3 years from now, based on this second apron, CBA, the penalties, and all of that. I've said this 1,000 times this year. I think the decline of the big three has been wildly overstated. So I have no concerns about their production this year. But if you're going to do this for 4 more years, let's go 2 or 3 seasons from now, and everybody is making top dollar to the point where you don't really have any flexibility to add around them. Can they still be the three, like the 3 best players on your team, and have you not, have you still be a playoff team? I have questions about that, but I think it's the right. I still think it's the right move. If that plays out in a negative way, you bite the bullet. You bite the bullet for players like this. It is the right thing to do from a basketball sense now, and the right thing to do from an emotional sense down the road.
It is interesting.
In my opinion.
It is interesting, though, because we kind of openly debated this, maybe either me and Dibs or me and Mark a couple weeks ago. Like, Joe, this was going to be a defining move. This offseason, in a lot of ways, is going to be defining for Joe. Is he a sportsman and he's all in on the titles, or is he a businessman and he's going to do what's best for his pocketbook? And I wasn't really sure which he was. Because I don't know him that well, and he's fairly young in his ownership group. But at this point, I think we know he's a businessman first. And Dibs said it right. It's about making money, and it's about it's not. I'm not saying he doesn't care about titles, but he cares a lot about the business side of it.
But I don't think that, to Mark's point, the next 3 years you are sacrificing the chance at a title as much as you would be if you didn't bring back Draymond and you traded Klay and you got younger and you tried to elongate whatever you're trying to do. I think bringing back Steph, Klay, and Draymond with Wiggins and Looney and GP2, and now you got Chris Paul, a move that I like. And you and I talked about it when you were in for Mark. I don't think that prohibits you from winning in the next year, 2 or 3. I think it's after year 3 or year 4 when Steph is gone and Klay is gone and Draymond's up and Wiggins will be in his player option. At that point, you might be back in the lottery, but if you're Joe Lacob, I think you're willing to sacrifice whatever happens in 2027, as Mark likes to always talk about. Like, we're really going to worry about 2028 or 2030? If you're Joe Lacob, you'll worry about that when you get there.
You do, but I also think that sends a message, and maybe like all young players be damned, but if Klay says, I want to be back after the season, I want to line myself up with Steph and Dre, okay, well then you give him 2 years or 3 years, however you want to slice it. Okay, so that puts Stephen Curry in close to 40, Draymond and Klay age 37-ish. If you're not competing, and Joe Lacob has said multiple times that he wants to be in contention, I think his goal was, Jerry Buss, 16 and 33 years as far as finals. If you don't show that you can be in that category this year, well, then you are kind of punting, in a sense, on the last 2 or 3, however you want to slice it, with the big 3 of trying to get to a finals and trying to compete for a championship. Maybe that's good enough for people, and that's why the question we threw out was, is nostalgia good enough? Like, if they don't win, are you going to be okay with just simply watching the twilight of players' careers and watch them continue to get older and decline?
The answer to that's no. And it's close with these 3, but I'm only saying that just not based on my opinion. I'm just saying historically a fan base will start to get frustrated. I
agree.
People named Brandon and a guy named Buster, the fan base in 2019 was done with them. They were done. It's like we handed out a bunch of thank you contracts. This has not gone well. This is boring. It doesn't work anymore. Then a pandemic hit, a new regime came in, and then those guys came back, all had career years at the same time, 107 wins, and everybody was all thrilled that they were still in Giants uniforms. But I don't forget what was happening 2 years before, which was people were super ticked. People were done. People wanted new blood. People were excited about young players. So I hear what you're saying, and I wonder how the finances around these guys will look as we go to 2 years and 3 years, and does the cap widen, and is there more space to add people around them? Because I think that they can be the centerpieces that they've been in the past 3 years from now is not realistic. So it's a little split the difference. Nostalgia is great, provided that you're not the 11 seed.
Do you guys, to me, it comes down to the how do they pivot off of Paul? If they let Paul walk and he walks away and it becomes a cap savings, that is a way to kind of get your financial house in order. But that's not going to be as popular as, hey, we could turn Paul into player X and player Y, and maybe one of those guys leaves at the end of the year or so, but the other guy is a piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
I that to me is going to be interesting to pivot off of Paul.
Now, I don't know if they'll keep the payroll at the same spot where it is now. I know he spoke on that over the weekend about how this is going to be the most expensive team in the history of the NBA this year. If Paul's deal is gone, so there's 30, and I know that this is still in the tax penalty area, and then Klay gets a new deal, but the number is lower. In theory, you would have some flexibility there to go get some pretty good players or a great player to put around those guys who provide some youth. Plus, there are other things we don't know between now and then. Does Jonathan Kuminga become a dude?
That's it. Yeah.
Right. I think it's possible.
What if
I
2
don't even know
years
if he's
from now,
allowed to be, though, with the people on this roster.
Well, they have a team option, so at the end of this year, you'll either decide that Jonathan Kuminga gets Jordan Poole type extension, less than Jordan Poole, or you just pick up his final year option and say, all right, Jonathan, you're going to have to play this one out. And a lot of it, to me, also depends on Klay Thompson. If Klay plays like last year, and I think I asked both of you, Larry and Mark, this question, like, how would you value last year in terms of on the open market? And you both said about $30 million a year.
Well, we're just puppeting Bobby Marks. He came on our station and said that right now is about a $30 million player. Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. Yeah.
Good listening skills.
Yeah.
So,
Bobby actually agreed with me. I had said that. No, I'm just joking.
actually, you were the one who wanted to trade Klay Thompson.
That's right.
Get him out. Pre-draft, yeah. Although you also did say the Warriors should take Podziemski, and I took your Podziemski and put my Podziemski in Mark's face, and so I ended up being right on draft day. Thank you. I gave you credit.
3 summer league games later, everybody now hates Podziemski.
He shot 21% from 3.
I mean, what are you going to do?
That's
they
life
were
in the
all
big
good
city.
looks. It was a couple of, a little bit of an in and out for Podziemski.
He was sick. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, I think the whole thing for me is fascinating based on how Klay plays. Because if Klay plays like last year, which overall was a good year, it was a $30 million year. If he plays a little bit better than that, having actually, played this summer and comes in shape, and he's now a $35 million a year player, that changes everything in terms of what you can do.
Yeah, and I think it's important that he plays well for his own psyche, because I think he's going to have, to me, and this is from afar, but it just looks like he's going to be the guy who has problems adjusting to the downside of his career. And if he could bounce back and have a very soft down arc, let's just say, I think that's going to benefit him, the team, everybody.
Yeah, I just wonder at the end of this season if you're stuck in the same place as you were last year, which is, close, banging on the door, but clearly a level down from whoever's coming out of the Western Conference. I guess I just have a hard time with seeing Joe Lacob looking at this team and saying, you know what? I'm going to keep paying that tax bill, maybe try and bring in some guys. Obviously, we're going to try and compete. But you know what? I'm just going to keep footing this bill for a first or second round team. I don't believe that he's shown that to be in his DNA thus far. Well, and I'm not saying that this quote doesn't mean that he's, he wouldn't continue to pay the big three, but 365 days from now, look, how much changed from last time this year to now? Like the entire shape and scope of where the Warriors are going in as an organization, it seems. They've leaned into the one timeline, even though he said there was never a two timeline plan. I don't know. It feels a little reactionary to me, and that's why I wouldn't be surprised to see them react again at the end of next season if it doesn't go their way.
I mean, it depends on as always, it depends on how it goes. Like, I mean, there's two different kinds of bad things that can happen. You know what? Like to me, where they would be wrong with their selection of the only timeline, but timeline one, going with veterans, where they would be wrong is if everybody ends up hurt. If it just shows that these guys cannot make it through an NBA season anymore, that's
very well could happen.
And that could happen. And so if Chris Paul is hurt and Steph got ankles and Klay Thompson's dealing with lower body stuff and Draymond's dealing with a back, if that's all happening next April, then the Warriors probably end up with some egg on their face and I think would have a hard time kicking the can down the road. But I think that they believe that with the correct approach, that they physically can get those guys ready come playoff time, as they have the last 2 years. And I think they also believe that their production is still good. I mean, every Warrior fan can walk away from this season and decide why they fell short. I don't look at production of those three players as the problem this year at all. As I've said to you guys, they were all three of them individually better than they were the year before when they won a title.
But there's no guarantee that that's going to kind of just, evenly distribute. Injuries are a funny thing. They could come in huge doses and wind up changing the narrative quite a bit. Or it could just be kind of like what we saw this year, and it could just be another kind of a year. To me, I thought this year was the year they kind of ran out of players as the season went on. And I'd like to see them do a little bit more to make sure whatever flow they get Kuminga, Moody, and their young core in, that they can maintain that into the playoffs. Because if they can't, it's not, who cares if you win a bunch of games in the regular season and then, we're 2 games in the playoffs, Kuminga's not trustable, sit down, now what?
All right, help us kick this off, what we're about to do. You guys want the Giants to get Ohtani in these next 2 weeks or not?
I'd hope so.
No.
Okay. One of each.
No,
we have that. We have that on our show too.
Alrighty.
No.
We have one of each on our show too.
Bring him to
so
the bag.
Go ahead. Why?
Because I really believe that the Giants season is about the youth, and they played better when they brought up youth, and they need an outfielder, and Ramos is ripping. They need a starting pitcher, and Wisenhunt looks awesome. They need a shortstop, and Tyler Fitzgerald is there. They have internal solutions that will allow them to still play free and easy, keep their money down, keep their focus on the future, have this be a successful year, make the playoffs as is, and then you've got all your cachet of young players to say to Shohei in the offseason, not only are we going to pay you X amount, 60 million, 70 million, whatever, but we also have a cachet of young players, and they're all on the verge of breaking through. Come to San Francisco. So that'll be my pitch. I don't think. I'm really fearful of the Beltran situation where they traded for Beltran in 2011.
Years old. Yeah.
And as soon as they did, and I've talked to guys who were on that team who said, you know what? We were playing above our heads after Buster went out, but as soon as the Beltran move got made, we kind of knew from above that there were now expectations, and we felt the burden of those expectations. I'd hate to see the Giants trade whatever collection of prospects, get a guy like Ohtani. I'll have the burden of expectations and maybe fall through the floorboards, and then maybe he walks at the end of the year and you're looking really bad. So I would rather play it a little bit more conservatively.
And why are you a yes?
I'll keep it short because I think if you don't trade for him, you're not getting him in free agency. I think
Why
it's
do
the only
you think
chance.
that?
Well, you just laid out a couple of reasons, but history, for one, I think there's better suitors for Ohtani. And when have they been able to get a guy? Like, why is Shohei Ohtani going to be the first guy? That's a question I have.
First of all, he's not. He's not. We get into this semantics argument all the time, but Carlos Correa said yes to a contract. So he doesn't play for the team, but he said yes. Actually, this is
Carlos Correa in the same stratosphere as Shohei Ohtani?
Aaron Judge is.
Yeah, nobody is.
Yeah. They came close.
Bryce Harper's in the same stratosphere.
Yeah.
They came close.
And when you say
Stanton,
better, when you say better
they
suitors,
came close.
better suitors for Ohtani, who?
The Dodgers.
And?
Padres.
Yankees, maybe?
The Yankees. The Mets.
Okay. I got some info for everybody.
Okay. Appreciate it. That's what's coming up from...
Look at
that, inside sources.
I got Pete.
Can you wait till I get to the garage and do my 14-sided turn?
Well, it depends. Which I got all kinds of info. Which info do you want?
I'm going to need a number of turns. I might need to leave right now.
Which item would you like me to hold? Because I got all kinds of stuff.
I want to hear.
By the time you get to the garage, he'll just be able to speak
That's
because
right.
you know I'm pretty ball dominant on this show. So I'm going to give you about 7
Like
or 8
Jim
minutes.
Ski.
We've booked.
I got All-Star game thoughts too.
Between now
Really?
and
Look at you.
2:45, it's just welcoming Dan back. We're going to go hole by hole at Old Greenwood
on Sunday
Of the
forget
85,
Saturday.
yeah. Of the 85.
We're going to
Exactly.
start on the back 9 just to really mess with people.
Good Lord.
We'll get to the 18th and they'll think we're finally done. And we'll be like, then on the first hole, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So
A good little drive. Started up the left and caught a little piece on the right side, Mark.
Okay, so you should be in your car in plenty of time.
I should be plenty of time.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll even stop. Maybe I'll stop on the way downstairs.
Get an afternoon coffee, right? A little iced
heck.
coffee. It's a beautiful day outside.
And we're playing with listeners, I understand, right? Next Tuesday?
That is
25th.
correct.
Okay.
And
Day
I
training
have
camp.
not started my practice routes
Let me
for
know
that at
who the
all.
winners were so I can vet them properly.
I do not have names.
Okay.
There were people.
We need
What
names.
if in front of the listeners or with the listeners you fire like a 125 or something?
Dude, then they're going to get to see my 5-iron fly through the air.
They're going
like
to
a
get to meet.
seagull.
They're going to get to meet the real Dan
yeah,
Dibley.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
going to be a Dan day.
It'll be a total
It's
Dan
not
day.
a Dibs day.
No.
A 125. Even the look on your face changed right there.
Look
It's
at
the
him.
idea.
He turned into the same color as his hoodie.
It's
my
actually
gosh.
a Willard and Dibs day coming up next on 95.7 The Game. That's what's coming up.
I'm a fat red pumpkin.